Chris Gordy from Locked On SEC. It's college football smothered and covered.
You are Locked On College Football, smothered and covered, with your host, Barrett Sallee. Your one-stop shop for everything college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, thank you for making this your first listen today. Brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and we'll get you started with $200 in bonus bets. That's right. First $5 bet gets you $200 guaranteed in bonus bets. Go to FanDuel.com. Hey, Chris Gordy's here. What's up, Chris?
What's going on, Barrett? My goodness, is the Earth off its axis? I don't know what's going on right now with all the SEC teams. It's craziness.
Right. I mean, it is wild. And of course, you have everything covered on Locked On SEC. And I mean, look, I covered this conference. In no way, shape, or form did I think Vandy was going to beat Alabama. That is not anything that was even considered. And obviously, with what happened with Missouri getting smoked and then Tennessee, it was a wild weekend. So before we get into specific games, were you exhausted at midnight? Because I laid my head down on a pillow. I was like, damn, man.
Dude,
I can't do this. I'm exhausted.
I felt like Reese Davis calling that Cal Miami game. I was at one point, I was like, is this still Reese Davis calling the game? He sounded awful, but from what I understand, it was kind of circumstances. He was thrown into it last minute. But I mean, I know that he was up at 2, 3 a.m. Pacific time to get ready, prepping for game day. And so he didn't sleep all day, but I fell asleep as Miami was mounting that comeback, and I woke up the next morning surprised Miami did come back. But no, it was a wild day. I mean, what were they saying? First time in 15, 20 years we've had a day with that many upsets in one day. It was craziness.
Yeah, I remember back in 2007, there was a day that I think 5 top 25 teams lost, and that was the same year that Rutgers was ranked number 1 and South Florida was ranked number 2. I mean, I don't know if we're going to go that deep in terms of random ascension, like Indiana perhaps making the college football playoff and being number 1, but you never know. After what we've seen this year, we're certainly going to get a lot of them. Now, let's talk about Bama and Vandy, and I said this on the show yesterday, that Vandy just flat out whipped them. You put those two teams in a vacuum, put neutral uniforms on them, and you would think that Vandy was the significantly better team. What does that say about Kalen DeBoer, knowing he went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows? Because Nick Saban would never let that happen.
Yeah, it's two extremes, right? I mean, literally 1 week, they're beating their rival Georgia and Kirby Smart, the preseason favorite to win it all. And Bama fans everywhere were going, the Bama dynasty ain't dead, brother. Here we come. Going straight from Saban to Kalen DeBoer. He's going to keep this train on the tracks and keep rolling. To a few days later, you lose to Vanderbilt. Now, again, I know this is it's an improved Vanderbilt team, massively improved, but still, Alabama in no circumstance ever should be losing to Vanderbilt. They just, with the talent, the resources, and everything that they have on that team, inexcusable loss for Kalen DeBoer, and he's gonna have to bust his ass to prove that was not a fluke, or was a fluke rather, and that they are a much better team and they can rally, and they still got the whole road ahead of them, but still got road trips at Tennessee, at LSU. I mean, it's a tough battle still that Alabama's got to hoe here. But I will say, if we're talking about, it wouldn't shock me, Barrett, if down the road we look back and go, give me a top 10 list of all-time transfers of the last decade. Obviously, Joe Burrow is going to be on that list, but I think Diego Pavia, combination with Tim Beck and Jerry Kill, that trio going to Nashville, it's taking Vanderbilt out of the doldrums to, oh my God, they're actually competitive. And honestly, you had the battle of in overtime against Mizzou, and really, Barrett, that late overtime or late fourth quarter loss to Georgia State, you can make a case Vanderbilt is 2 plays away from being undefeated right now. Literally, because they took a shot at the end zone in overtime when they were down 3, and it was called for offensive pass interference. But if the kid catches the ball, they win. They beat Missouri. If they hold on defensively, they beat Georgia Southern. We're talking about 5-0 Vanderbilt team right now. And so, look, I think we need to give Vanderbilt some credit here. So much of the conversation shifts to, oh my God, what a terrible loss for Alabama. Give Vanderbilt some credit because, to your point, they never trailed in this one Barrett. Like Vanderbilt led from the get-go and never looked back. I think there's some questions about this Alabama defense, certainly. Do you know, like I was looking at it, do you know they've given up the last 6 quarters? I think it's like 60 points when you give it up to 40 to Vanderbilt and then 27 in the second half to Georgia. It's 67 points you've given up in the last 6 quarters of play. And going back and looking up, they gave up, was it 31 total to Georgia and then 40 to Vanderbilt. The last time Bama's given up that many points in back-to-back games, you had to go back to 2018 where they gave up 30 plus to Kyler Murray and Oklahoma in the semifinal, and then 40 plus to Clemson and Trevor Lawrence in the national championship game. The difference is, Barrett, both those guys ended up being the number 1 pick in the NFL draft.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Number 1 pick in the draft.
Well, and look, I mean, even USF scored on Alabama. And I'll be honest, you look at how Diego Pavia played, I think they took a lot from that USF game because you saw USF use Alabama's speed against it, not to that level, but it's concerning for me. And I think when you're right with Vandy, this might not be where, James Franklin was back-to-back 9-win seasons, because that was kind of by virtue of a down SEC East to an extent. And obviously divisions aren't there anymore, but we're talking about a Vandy program. I truly believe, based on how they approached this season, that they can be a 7-5 team, 8-4 team on any given year, as long as Clark Lee stays true to what this is. And that is properly identifying talent. And it's not just that Diego Pavia beat Auburn with New Mexico State. It was that the scheme works. To me, this is almost like the appetizer to what Dave Clawson did at Wake Forest. It might not be pretty, it might not be traditional, but it works. And I think that's where we're headed with this Vanderbilt team.
Yeah, no doubt. I remember watching their spring game 2 years ago, and I remember like Cedric Alexander, I was like, wow, that kid's a good back. And then throughout last season, it was like they couldn't get it. Like he couldn't find those running lanes and all that. It's a great comparison because, like, yeah, you got to have the talent, you got to have the players, but you also have to have the scheme. And that's what Jerry Kill and Tim Beckett brought over. And it's a great offensive system that, to your point, like they game planned it perfectly. And it's a great parallel in the two teams we're going to see play this week. Vanderbilt and Kentucky, a few weeks ago, you would have said that game, who's going to watch that game? Now it becomes an attractive game because both these teams are coming off monumental wins. Kentucky had their bye, but prior to that, it beat, top 5 Ole Miss, and now Vanderbilt coming off the beating of number 1 Alabama. I thought both of them, the game plan was right. It was keep away, play keep away, keep moving the chains, and keep scoring. But don't give that other offense the ball. And
keep Jalen on those sidelines.
Yeah, both Kentucky and Vanderbilt did it phenomenally in their monster wins.
They did. Texas A&M looks phenomenal as well. I said this. I did an instant reaction show on Saturday after that game, and I don't care how good you think Texas A&M is in reality. The reality is that they're 3-0. That in SEC terms, the schedule is really easy. I mean, aside from Texas, at the end of the season, LSU's their toughest home game. Their toughest road games like South Carolina or Auburn, depending on how you want to judge each one of those teams. So, it's set up really well for Texas A&M. I love the fact that they got Connor Wegman involved with his legs a little bit, not a ton, but a little bit, because when he got hurt, like even in that Notre Dame game, he was coming off the injury. He looked hesitant. He didn't look hesitant on Saturday. To me, it's him in a position where this Texas A&M team could make the SEC championship game and is actually more likely to make the college football playoff considering the schedule.
Yeah, and it's crazy. They're the only 3-0 team in the SEC right now. It was crazy. Yeah. Sunday morning when I pull up the SEC standings, and there's A&M right at the top, and there's Vanderbilt tied with Florida at 1-1 in the conference. I'm like, what is happening? Again, it's early, but no, man, I love it. I went back to, you remember preseason when Reuben Owens gets hurt, and I think people overreacted to it. I like Reuben Owens a lot. He was a 5-star kid out of the state of Texas, and they were so excited about him last year as a true freshman, and this year they thought he was going to take a step forward and be a big contributor. but he wasn't the starter. And I remember reading articles that said A&M loses their starting running back. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Lost Amari Daniels.
Yeah, I was going to say, did they?
They're still ahead of him on the depth chart. And by the way, they're still pretty good. Like that tandem together last year was pretty awesome. Fast forward to this year, Le'Veon Moss is emerging as a legit home run running back in the SEC. And I couldn't believe it when I saw yesterday, Barrett, Jaquindon Jackson, Dylan Sampson slide back. Le'Veon Moss is now the leading rusher in the SEC. He's 7th in the country in rushing yards. Amari Daniels finds the end zone twice. Moss finds the end zone 3 times. This is a dangerous run game that A&M has. And to your point now with Connor Wegman having full control of the offense and using his legs, and some of these receivers starting to emerge. Terry Bussey had a little breakout game. We know what Noah Thomas can do. Ja'Day Walker. This is a dangerous A&M offense combined with Mike Elko and that defense starting to figure things out. They had a couple games where they struggled against the run, but I think, God, they bottled up Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll and got after Brady Cook and made his day a living nightmare on Saturday. So it's a huge win for A&M. And you're right. I mean, you look at that schedule and okay. They've beaten LSU.
Where are the speed bumps? They don't exist.
Yeah, last 2 times LSU's gone to College Station, they've won that game. That's now a real rivalry with LSU. The road trip to South Carolina, the road trip to Auburn don't look scary. I mean, they could be literally going into that rivalry game against Texas. And I've been saying it all offseason that I picked that as an Aggie win. I feel like the Aggies, it's going to be their Super Bowl. Can you imagine? I thought it would be like their Super Bowl if they were 7-4, looking
exactly
4 or 7-5. If they have 10 wins going into that game, I mean, my God, what's on the line? A trip to Atlanta, possibly winning
maybe a playoff spot.
I mean, that changes the whole dynamic of that game.
It's going to be awesome. I think they might get to that point too. I wouldn't surprise me. I'd say right now, as long as they don't read too much of their press clippings, they actually might be a 1-loss team heading into that rivalry game, which, I mean, my goodness, that would be, you talk about a storybook, having that rivalry disappear for so long and then having it matter that much in the first time back, that would be awesome. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll look forward. There's a rivalry game somewhere in Texas. Maybe it's in Dallas. Maybe there's going to be some fried Oreos consumed. He's Chris Gordy. I'm Barrett Salee. Coming right back at you. It's college football smothered and covered. Of course, we're powered by Locked On. All right, folks, it's time for our Roy Player of the Week. This week, we're showing some love to Diego Pavia. How could you not? We're putting $100 on Diego Pavia right now through Roy, the ultimate platform, where you get to go directly to support your favorite athletes. Download Roy on iOS or Google Play. No middleman, no collective making the decisions for you. You get to decide who gets the backing, and it's easy. You can do it with just a few clicks. Here's the best part. With Roy, you know exactly where the money's going. Roy gives you the power to decide who gets it. Time to put your money where your mouth is. Every contribution from fans like us helps keep athletes committed to the team. And if they decide to transfer, you get your money back. How's that for transparency? So what are you waiting for? Download the Roy app today and make your contribution. Not only are you supporting the athlete's journey, but you're also helping to keep the team strong for next season. Remember, if they stay, you win. If they leave, no worries. You get your cash back. That wraps up our Roy Player of the Week segment. Don't forget, if you want to support more athletes, be a part of their success stories, Roy is the way to go. Keep those contributions coming, and let's change the game. Roy, support the players, change the game. All right, let's keep talking to Chris Gordy. Second segment, let's look forward. Oklahoma, Texas, Red River Shootout. We don't call it the rivalry. We call it the shootout. We're not PC here on Smothered and Covered. So each of these teams have had a week off. Oklahoma seemingly found their quarterback-ish, maybe, although it was against Auburn. And meanwhile, Texas is probably getting Quinn Ewers back. I don't see how this doesn't end with a shootout. And a shootout, my goodness, that favors Texas.
It does. And I think it's interesting that this line's been sitting around 14. I thought, when somebody asked me about this game a couple weeks ago, I thought it would have been closer to like 20-ish. But I guess they're respecting rivalry game. Oklahoma's going to try to play their best game of the season. I do think that the Hawkins the changing to Michael Hawkins is an interesting dynamic because I was hearing from folks in Norman earlier in the year saying, look, we love Jackson Arnold, but we really like the potential of Hawkins because of his running threat. And we saw what he was able to do against Auburn. Ran for like 70 yards, a rushing touchdown on top of, some safe throws they had. Bottom line, they got to get their receiving core healthy. We'll see how healthy they got coming, for 2 weeks to prepare for this game. But I don't know, man. This is the game that I kept saying, like, it's a danger spot to bring back Quinn Ewers for this game because he's been out for several weeks. And that's why I thought it was interesting. They gave it all the way up until like the day afternoon before Mississippi State to make the decision. All right, we're going to go with Arch, or is Quinn going to come back this week? I just keep going back to that game last year, Barrett, where everybody thought Texas was the better team. Or most people I talked to thought Texas was the better team. And Quinn Ewers had not one but two early interceptions in that game that really gave Oklahoma so much momentum. Now, Texas still got the ball back, field goal drive late to go ahead, and then Oklahoma in the final seconds goes right down the field, and they score the go-ahead touchdown, and Oklahoma wins that game. It's been a rivalry game that Oklahoma has largely dominated the last 10, 15 years. It's crazy because you just think of Texas and you think they've won the Big 12 way more than they actually did. But it's been Oklahoma, and that's been the team that's really dominated this rivalry. And so it really is. It's a game that I think everybody and their brothers is going to pick Texas. Quinn Ewers is back. I just wonder, Barrett, if Quinn is a little rusty at all. On top of Jaden Blue, last time we saw him against Mississippi State, fumbled once or twice in that game. Like, Texas has got to take care of the football. This is the their big rivalry game. Protect the football. If Quinn Ewers throws an interception, if there's fumbles, it's going to open the door for Oklahoma to do what they do. And I think Oklahoma's defense is a little bit better than people are giving them credit for. I like what they've done so far this year. Granted, they haven't been, tested a ton, but they made the big play that mattered against Auburn. So, I still think Texas wins it, but I do think, rivalry game. I think Oklahoma's going to keep this close.
Yeah, we've seen some weird things in that. And you mentioned the wide receivers for Oklahoma. I'll be fascinated to see when the injury report first comes out on Wednesday, how many of those guys are listed on it. And perhaps if Brent Venables maybe pulls a Lane Kiffin and lists half his roster, because there are, I think right now it's kind of believable that Oklahoma would be missing all of its receivers because obviously they did against Auburn, but maybe he plays some games a little bit and not give Steve Sarkisian something to prepare for. I can just see it now. And I know you're in Texas. You're on 790. I'm sure you get this all the time. The first mistake that Quinn Ewers makes. Bring in Arch. Quinn sucks. Bench him.
Well, the flip side to that is Arch has been largely awesome. Like, that's why, he's not only just got the Manning name on the back of his jersey, but like his playing time that he's gotten, he's been really good. He had a couple interceptions here and there, but like for the most part, he's been pretty damn awesome and had looked poised and confident and all that. So I get where people always, teams where the backup quarterback's always the most popular, but I think this is a situation where, again, if Quinn Ewers does what he did in this game a year ago and has the early interceptions, I think, there will be people making that call. But I'm with you. Like, Quinn Ewers he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's among the most accurate. I think he's right there with Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe on completion percentage, and they're all right behind Graham Mertz, who for a second straight year is one of the most accurate quarterbacks.
Nobody's talking about it.
But yeah, I think Quinn Ewers he's more mature. I think he's ready for this moment. I do expect he will play well. And if they do, the biggest thing that shocked me, Barrett, is they changed out almost his whole wide receiving core. And from the get-go, he had a chemistry with these guys, whether it was Isaiah Bond or Matthew Golden from Houston, like all these dudes that he's been able to play with, they all are in sync. So, this is the one where I think Sark's going to have them ready, and, we'll see. It wouldn't shock me, though, if Oklahoma hung around, but this could be also the game where Texas puts their foot on their throat and says, hey, big brother and little brother, we're about to show you, who the dominant team is in the SEC this year.
Yeah, you mentioned Texas receivers. I wasn't the biggest Isaiah Bond guy at all. And, man, you're right. Quinn has clicked with them. I'm on Billy Napier watch all the time. I've already got my story written for Outkick. If and when he does get fired, it's a fait accompli. We just don't know when they're going to do it. They have to wait for the opportunity. I thought they'd lose to UCF. I didn't think that UCF was secret garbage, and yet here they are. Now, the Tennessee game, maybe this is it. We've seen in the past, this rivalry is decidedly one-sided, which means Billy could save his job. I don't think it'll happen. Give me a reason, give me a way that I'm wrong and Florida gets the upset.
Well, they've beaten Mississippi State. They've beaten UCF, where I come from, Barrett. We call that a winning streak and a chance to.
It has happened before.
It has happened before. They have a chance to take a winning streak into Knoxville, where Tennessee, last I've checked, man, scoring 50, 60, 70 points in their non-con games. But since they got into SEC play, a little bit tougher to score. I thought Austin Armstrong, for the first time in a long time, that Florida defense looked really, really good against UCF. I think I read it was just the fourth time since Malzahn has been at UCF that they've weren't able to get the ground game going at all. They did a really good job of slowing that down, getting after KJ Jefferson, who I've been on the record as I sold on him a year ago. I loved him early in his years at Arkansas. I was out on him. But just a dominant performance by Florida. Winning 24-13, they get the interception late. Carry that momentum over. If that defense can slow down Dylan Sampson and get after Nico, my goodness, Arkansas, Landon Jackson, those guys were getting penetration left and right on the offensive line. That I think they did it early, that it rattled Nico. That as the night went along, he was hearing what was the old seeing ghosts. He was
seeing ghosts for sure.
Yeah, it was he was getting rid of the ball and inaccurate. It was dude, settle down. I'm curious to see what Florida does. Do they bring more? Look, you get burned by the blitz. Take a chance. If you get burned, so be it. But I'm curious if they do that and Mertz and Lagway continue to protect the football. You run effectively with Montreal Johnson. I think they got a chance to stay in this game with Tennessee. On the flip side, Tennessee's going, okay, we're just coming off our first loss. We gotta have a statement game and let's get our offense back. But I look at this one. This one is going to be a tough one, but I look at that Kentucky game in 2 weeks as a game that, that's one you can win. Kentucky's been much more competitive in that rivalry in recent years. And then the LSU and Ole Miss game. Can you get one of those? If he can do that, I think they beat Florida State at the end of the year. I just think right now what we've seen, Florida's a better team than Florida State. I think he can get to 6 wins. And if he gets to 6-6, I think Napier stays. But I'm with you. Keep that draft ready to go.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had Florida 7-5 this year, and I had them losing 5 straight games at the end. And I looked at my preseason predictions here today. I'm like, holy crap, I might be right about that. How am I right about Florida of all teams?
It's good. Phil Steele, I had him on the show before the season. He was saying maybe 8 or 9 wins. He was buying into what Billy Napier was selling. And honestly, I mean, look, we're starting to see A&M is a pretty good team. We're starting to see Miami's a pretty good team. So both their losses are not bad losses in the grand scheme of things. You lost to 2 good teams. That's why I think this game's very important for them. If they can go and have a good showing against Tennessee, who knows what happens at the end. But I don't know, man. It's tough too, because if he can salvage this recruiting class and has the guarantee that DJ Lagway is going to stay next year and he'll be back, maybe you give him one more year. But you got to see more positive signs here these last couple weeks.
I like Billy. I hope he does stick around. And then I think he's a good coach. I think that he got dealt a terrible hand. I don't think a lot of folks realized how bad it got in terms of player development under Dan. And yeah, they might miss some of those wins, but combined with schedule and injuries, Billy's kind of been out in the cold right now, or for the last couple of years. I don't know. I hope they keep him. We'll see. We'll see what happens this weekend. Chris, appreciate it.
Anytime, Barrett. Thanks, man.
Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check stats, play-by-play, all that stuff right there on the same page that you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 guaranteed in bonus bets when you make your first $5 wager. That's right, $200 guaranteed in bonus bets when you place your first $5 wager. It's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, thank you very much for making this your first listen. If you want to be part of the College Football Smothered and Covered Insider crew, there's a link right below, whether you're watching or listening. You can join up to be part of the subtext. You can yell at me. I can give you inside info, behind the scenes things that I'm thinking about, like maybe some videos too of what's going on in my world, both as a professional and as a person, dad, whatever you want to say. Join the subtext. It's right there. Description below. Thank you, Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC. Go subscribe to his show as well. He does a great job over there. Until next time, have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.